Right, folks, hey there. This is day 3 of our devotional series. It's just a couple hours later than when I recorded day 2. I'm at another rest stop. Now I'm north of Bakersfield, south of Fresno on the 99. So I'm in the Central Valley of California. This is where they grow all of our food. You can see behind me there's some crops and stuff here. What I'm really sad about today is way back in the distance, what generally you can see there as I make this drive is you can see the Sierra Nevadas. But the entire valley just has a layer of smoke and haze over it. So you can't even see the mountains, which at this time of year, you're almost always able to see the Sierra. So I'm bummed about that. But again, just a reminder to be praying for all the folks that are impacted in that way. So we continue on in this week in which we're thinking about the Bible as our primary document, what that means for us, and thinking about that with our prayer calendar and these devotionals. So today the theme is listening to the Word, listening to the Word. And let me just say, how many of these devotionals have and how many of these devotionals that we do, how many other devotionals that you ever read are focused around listening? How just pay attention to that as you're going through these devotionals, as you're going through any other devotionals that you work through. How much we talk in our spiritual life, how much the encouragement in our spiritual life is to listen, right? We spend a lot of time studying. We spend a lot of time talking. We spend a lot of time sort of praying, and usually when we talk about praying, it's us saying things to God. But just how much of our spiritual life is really built around us being quiet and just listening to God. And so we're going to hear a couple scriptures about that today. So the first one is Romans chapter 10 verse 17. So Romans over in your New Testament, just after the Gospels. So the Gospels, 4 Gospels, then Acts, then Romans. So Romans 10, 17. So faith comes from what is heard, and what is heard comes through the word of Christ. So faith comes from what is heard, and what is heard comes through the word of Christ. And again, just like we said earlier, when these folks are talking about like the Word of God or the Word of Christ, we might think of that as the Bible. So if someone said, what does the Word of God say about this? We would almost always immediately turn to the Bible. But that's, for them, when they say the Word of Christ, they're literally talking about when Jesus was here with them. It's like they're from that first generation. So imagine that when for these folks, when you could say, what does the Word of God say about that? And someone next to you is like, well, I was at the Sermon on the Mount, and let me tell you about that and what he said. So for us, when it says the Word of Christ, it's talking about the biblical text. That's the way we hear it. And so faith comes from what you have heard in the Word of Christ. Faith comes from what you have heard in the Word of Christ. I mean, that necessitates that we've heard something in the Word of Christ. That necessitates that we have spent time in the Word of Christ. That's what we're talking about this week. That's what we mean when we say the Bible is our primary document. John 6:63 is next. So go back to the Gospel of John 6:63. It is the Spirit that gives life. The flesh is useless. The words that I have spoken to you are spirit and life. So it is the Spirit that gives life. So we're talking about the soul. And Jesus says these are Jesus' words from John. These are Jesus was telling this to the disciples. So the flesh is useless. The Spirit is what gives life, and I have spoke what I speak is of the Spirit. And so we've got this entire body of knowledge, of information that's coming at us from the world around us. And then we've got the tradition of our faith, right? The Spirit of Christ that gives us life. And what we have to figure out is how to hear that amidst everything that's coming at us. But of course, if we never spend time in the scriptures, we're never going to be able to hear it, no matter how much we quiet our lives. So I pray that this day, as you go forth and maybe spend a little bit of extra time in the biblical text, that you might hear the Spirit of God speaking directly to your soul. God bless.